Hi, Dawn Lewis here, and today I have a KennyK digital stamp project for you, and we are going to make this cool watercolor technique background using distressings. But the very first thing that we are going to do is color our digital stamp using Copic markers. Now, I made this card quite a long time ago for Australian Card Making, Stamping and Papercraft magazine, but I neglected to write down the Copic colours. I wrote down all the other materials I used, but forgot to write down the Copics. So I'm going to wing it and tell you that for her skin, I will be using E50, E51 and E53. It's been my go-to for years, although now I do use E21 in the mix for the third lineup before I put on the E53. For her dress, I'm using R21, no, hang on, I'm using R20, R21, R22, and R24. Now, you'd think I'd be using red violets because I'm colouring in pink, but these are actually reds, and I use these when colouring a very strong red because having a pink underneath your red really lifts it. If you just colour straight red, it's a lot harder to get highlights in there, and so these paler colours will lift the red when you're colouring it. But I stopped at R24 just for the very darkest parts, and I think it's made a really gorgeous pink. I chose this particular shade of pink to match the distressings we'll be using later on. For her hair, I'm using E31, E33, and possibly E35 there by the look of it. I will have used B00 and possibly B01 for her eyes. I've used the pinks on her dress, the flowers in her hair, her shoes, and a couple of accents on her walking frame, and the rest of the walking frame is coloured in cool greys. I'm using a couple of BGs, very pale ones for the leaves in her hair, and I love this stamp because I can customize it, and I know some great kids, especially girls who love to dance and are in walking frames, and I like to use this stamp for their birthdays. But let's get on to the customized watercolor background. Here I'm just smushing some distressing, so I'm using worn lipstick and abandoned coral onto a page projector. You could use any kind of plastic you have around. I'm spritzing it with a mini mister with plain water, flipping it over, and then just mushing all of those wet distressings around onto a piece of Ranger watercolor paper. And look at that. I mean, how cool is that? Now, I've chosen to dry my ink in between layers, and at one point you'll see I don't. The reason when you dry it is when you put down another layer of ink, like I'm doing here, it's not going to bleed and get muddy with the other ink. It's going to sit on top, which is great. It also helps if you remember that when you flip your plastic over, it will be in mirror reverse. Now, I didn't dry that green ink, I put down some pink ink, and it got a little bit muddy. So I've then gone back to drying it in between layers. It's very pink heavy, so I'm just adding a little green. This is cracked pistachio, just to fill in all those white spaces. And then we've got this really cool watercolored panel, and you didn't even have to paint it. How awesome is that? I've stash dried for the rest of this project. This is a piece of lawn fawn pattern paper. It's called Polka in the Meadow Dewdrop, and I've put a little on the left and the right, making sure my hearts are the right way up, of the card base, and then just added some double-sided tape to the back of the watercolor panel and pop that right down the middle, so it's bordered by those little hearts left and right. I'm using some clear embossing ink on black cardstock to stamp a greeting from Flutter by Lawn Fawn. I use that a lot. I'm surprised how much I use it. I've used white embossing powder, heat set that, and then just trimmed it down top and bottom, as well as cutting some triangles left and right to give it that pennant kind of look. Now, you can get dies that do this, but you know, I pick where I spend my money on, and I can do that with a craft knife really easy. When fussy cutting this, cut the inside sections and then cut round the outside. She's a very complicated stamp. You'll notice I haven't pressed it down really hard. That's because I want to adjust it a little at the bottom after I've put on the greeting. Now, I've used a coordinating print from the back of the information panel on my pattern paper. You totally can use that. Don't throw it in the bin. It's great for borders, and I love the bright white. It certainly lifts this card. I've added sequins, pink, white, and silver in varying sizes that I have in my stash, and stuck them down with Tombow mono adhesive. I love that it looks like she's sprinkling the sequins as she dances. This is a digital stamp. I will link to it below. She's called Ballerina from KennyKStamps.com. And here is her matching companion. This one is called High Score. For his background, I used tumbled glass, salty ocean, and spiced marmalade to match the colouring I did. And I've used another Lawn Fawn pattern paper called Let's Polka in the Meadow Baby Skunk. The greeting is from Lawn Fawn's Party Animal set, and the construction is exactly the same. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you've enjoyed this mushy watercolour technique and will give it a try. I really appreciate you watching, and especially I appreciate you subscribing. Thank you for that. I hope you have a super crafty day, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.